Black single mom sold her gold ring to the billionaire in the jewelry store, just to provide medical supplies for her ailing kid. The billionaire ended up offering her employment at the jewelry store and taking the medical responsibility of her kid. The gold wedding band slipped from Destiny's trembling finger, like a prayer she could no longer afford to keep. In that moment, standing in Chicago's most exclusive jewelry store, the desperate single mother faced an impossible choice. Her last precious memory of her late husband or life-saving medication for her 8-year-old son. What she didn't expect was the billionaire owner watching from the shadows, his heart breaking at the sight of a mother's sacrifice. What he didn't expect was how this ordinary Tuesday would shatter his carefully constructed world of profit and power. Sometimes the most valuable treasures aren't found in display cases. Sometimes they're found in the courage of a woman willing to give up everything for love, and in the heart of a man finally learning what true wealth really means. Before I continue, please subscribe to this channel to show your support, and let me know in the comments where you are watching from. The lights of Chicago General Hospital buzzed like dying insects above Destiny Johnson's head as she clutched the discharge papers with white knuckles. Her 8-year-old son Malik lay curled against her shoulder, his breathing shallow and labored even after 3 days of treatment. The pneumonia had cleared, but the underlying condition, the one requiring medications that cost more than her monthly rent, remained. "Mrs. Johnson?" The billing clerk's voice cut through her exhaustion. "We need to discuss payment arrangements for the outstanding balance." Destiny's eyes burned as she stared at the number, $3,847. The insurance had covered the hospitalization, but the specialized medications Malik needed to prevent future episodes weren't on their formulary. Without them, he'd be back here within weeks. "I understand," she whispered, signing papers she couldn't afford to honor. "I'll figure something out." The October wind whipped through her thin jacket as they waited for the bus outside. Malik shivered against her, his small body still fragile from the infection. She wrapped her arms tighter around him, her wedding ring catching the afternoon light. The gold band felt heavy on her finger, heavier than it had since Jerome died 2 years ago. 20 miles north, in the pristine silence of Westfield's most exclusive jewelry district, billionaire Harrison Blake stood behind bulletproof glass, examining a rare pink diamond through his jeweler's loupe. The stone was flawless, worth more than most people made in a lifetime, yet it left him feeling nothing. "Exceptional clarity, Mr. Blake," his store manager, Patricia, murmured beside him. "The collector in Dubai is prepared to increase his offer." Harrison set down the loupe, his gray eyes reflecting none of the diamond's fire. At 42, he owned a chain of luxury jewelry stores across 3 states, but he couldn't remember the last time beauty had moved him. Each acquisition felt mechanical, buy low, sell high, repeat. His penthouse apartment showcased museum-quality pieces, but he ate dinner alone most nights, surrounded by cold perfection. "Schedule the sale," he said, his voice carrying the practiced indifference of someone who'd forgotten how to want anything money couldn't buy. "I'll be in the Chicago store this afternoon." Back on the south side, Destiny tucked Malik into their narrow bed, his breathing finally steady in sleep. She sat on their second-hand couch, staring at the prescription bottles lined up on the coffee table like tiny soldiers of hope. The pharmacy had given her enough samples for 3 days. After that, she twisted the ring around her finger. Jerome had saved for months to buy it, working double shifts at the factory. He'd proposed right here in this apartment, his hands shaking as he slipped it onto her finger. "Forever and always, Des. This ring means you're never alone." But Jerome was gone, and forever had become a luxury she couldn't afford. The ring had been appraised at $2,800 2 years ago when she'd considered selling it to pay for the funeral. She'd changed her mind then, unable to let go of the last piece of their love. But Malik's labored breathing from the bedroom reminded her that some sacrifices were holy. Her phone buzzed, a text from her sister. "Girl, you know I'd help if I could. But with 3 kids of my own." Destiny closed her eyes. She understood. Everyone was drowning in their own struggles. Harrison's Bentley glided through Chicago's magnificent Mile District as he reviewed quarterly reports on his tablet. The numbers were excellent, profits up 18% from last year. Yet success felt increasingly hollow, like eating cotton candy when you craved substance. His phone rang. Blake. Mr. Blake, this is Patricia at the Chicago store. We have an unusual situation. A woman came in asking about selling a simple gold band. Nothing extraordinary, but she seems desperate. Should I handle it, or would you prefer? I'll be there in 10 minutes. He didn't know why he'd said it. Desperate sellers weren't uncommon in his business, especially in tough economic times. But something in Patricia's tone made him curious. Destiny stood outside Westfield Jewelers, her reflection ghost-like in the polished windows. The store gleamed with an intimidating perfection that made her acutely aware of her discount store clothes and worn sneakers. Through the glass, she could see displays worth more than her neighborhood's combined annual income. She touched the ring one last time, feeling Jerome's presence like a whisper. I'm sorry, baby, but our son needs this more than I need the memory. The door chimed softly as she entered, and the silence that followed felt heavy with judgment. She approached the counter where a perfectly groomed woman waited, her smile professional but distant. Good afternoon. How may I help you? Destiny's voice came out smaller than she'd intended. I need to sell this ring. As she began to slide the gold band from her finger, the store's back door opened. A tall man in an expensive suit emerged, his presence commanding immediate attention. Their eyes met across the showroom, his sharp with curiosity, hers bright with unshed tears. Neither could have known that this moment would change everything. Have you ever found yourself judging someone before knowing their story, only to discover your assumptions were completely wrong? The silence stretched between them like a held breath. Harrison found himself studying the woman's face. The way she held her chin high despite the tremor in her hands, the fierce protectiveness in her dark eyes, even as she prepared to surrender something precious. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with the polished perfection surrounding them. I'm Harrison Blake, he said, stepping closer to the counter. This is my store. Destiny's shoulders tensed. Great. The owner himself was here to witness her desperation. Destiny Johnson. I need to sell this ring. Her voice carried a dignity that made Harrison pause. This wasn't addiction or greed driving her here. This was love wearing the mask of necessity. May I? He gestured toward the ring still clinging to her finger. She nodded, but her hands shook as she tried to remove it. The band had grown tight over the years, swollen with memories and tears. It wouldn't budge. Here, Patricia approached with a small bottle of soap. This should help. But as Destiny worked the soap around her finger, her composure finally cracked. A sob escaped before she could stop it. I'm sorry. This ring was your wedding band, Harrison said quietly. She nodded, not trusting her voice. The soap made her fingers slippery, and suddenly the ring slid free, landing on the glass counter with a soft clink that sounded like breaking. Harrison picked up the simple gold band, feeling its modest weight. Under his jeweler's loop, he could see the inscription inside, Forever and Always J&D. The gold was good quality, but not exceptional. In his world, it was worth perhaps $800. But as he looked up at Destiny's face, at the way she stared at the ring like she was watching her heart being dissected, he understood he was holding something priceless. Tell me about it, he said, setting down the loop. Destiny wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. My husband saved for 6 months to buy that ring. Worked overtime at the Ford plant, brought lunch from home every day. He said, her voice broke again. He said it wasn't much, but it meant I'd never be alone. Where is he now? Cancer took him 2 years ago. The words came out flat, worn smooth by repetition. Left me with our son and a mountain of medical bills. Harrison felt something shift in his chest, a crack in the armor he'd built around his heart. And now, Malik, my boy, he's got respiratory issues. I need medication that costs more than I make in a month. She looked directly at Harrison, her gaze unflinching. So I guess Jerome was wrong. I am alone. But Malik doesn't have to suffer for it. The honesty in her words hit Harrison like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had spoken to him without calculation, without wanting something beyond what they'd already asked for? He turned the ring over in his palm, feeling its warmth. How old is Malik? 8. Her face softened despite her tears. He's brilliant, reads above grade level, loves science. Says he wants to be a doctor someday, so he can help other kids like him. Harrison closed his eyes. 8 years old. The same age he'd been when his own father died, leaving him and his mother to struggle alone. The same age when he'd learned that the world was divided into those who had power and those who didn't, and he'd sworn never to be powerless again. Mrs. Johnson, he said carefully, this ring, it's worth about $800. Retail. Her face fell. She'd been hoping for more. I understand. That's something at least. But Harrison wasn't finished. He studied her face, the exhaustion etched around her eyes, the way she stood as if carrying invisible weight, the love that radiated from her even in her desperation. However, he continued, I'm not interested in buying it. Destiny's world tilted. I what? Harrison walked around the counter until he stood directly in front of her. This close, he could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, the strength in the set of her jaw despite her tears. I said I'm not buying it, because that ring belongs on your finger. He held it out to her. Put it back on. I don't understand. But even as she spoke, her fingers reached for the band like iron drawn to a magnet. Your husband was right, Harrison said, his voice gentler than he'd heard it in years. You're not alone. Not anymore. The ring slid back onto her finger as if it had never left. The fit was perfect now, the soap having made the reunion effortless. Destiny stared at it, then at Harrison, confusion and hope warring in her expression. I still don't understand. Harrison felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, the desire to protect someone else's happiness more than his own interests. What I understand, Mrs. Johnson, is that some things shouldn't be sold. They should be honored. But Malik's medication will be taken care of. The words came out before he'd fully formed the thought, but they felt right in a way that surprised him. I want to help. Why? The question was barely a whisper. Harrison looked at this woman who'd been willing to sacrifice her most precious possession for her child's health, and felt something inside him, something he'd thought died with his father, flicker back to life. Because, he said, I've spent my entire adult life buying and selling beautiful things. But I've never seen anything as beautiful as what you just showed me. Destiny's hand flew to her mouth, the ring catching the light like a promise being reborn. The words hung in the air between them like something too fragile to touch. Destiny stared at Harrison, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. Men like him, wealthy, powerful men, didn't just offer to help strangers. There had to be a catch. I can't accept that, she said, taking a step back from the counter. The ring felt strange on her finger now, like it carried the weight of an unpaid debt. I don't even know you. Harrison watched her retreat, recognizing the wariness in her eyes. He'd seen it before in business negotiations, the moment when someone realized the deal was too good to be true. But this wasn't business, was it? You don't have to know me, he said. This isn't about me. Everything is about something. Destiny's voice carried the hard wisdom of someone who'd learned not to trust easy answers. What do you want from me? The question stung because Harrison couldn't answer it honestly. He didn't know what he wanted. For the first time in decades, he'd acted on impulse rather than calculation, and the unfamiliarity of it left him floundering. Nothing, he said, but even as the word left his mouth, he knew it wasn't entirely true. Right. Destiny's laugh was bitter. Rich men don't help poor black women out of the goodness of their hearts. Not in the real world. Patricia shifted uncomfortably behind the counter, clearly wishing she were anywhere else. Harrison felt a heat rise in his chest, not anger at Destiny's assumption, but at the world that had taught her to expect the worst from people like him. What if I did want something? He asked, his voice sharper than he'd intended. What if helping your son made me feel better about myself? Would that make it wrong? It would make it honest. Destiny pulled her purse tighter against her shoulder. Look, Mr. Blake, I appreciate the gesture, but I can't afford to owe someone like you. I've seen what happens when people like me get in debt to people like you. People like me. Harrison repeated the words like they tasted bad. You don't know anything about people like me. I know enough. Destiny's eyes flashed. I know you didn't build all this by being charitable. I know men with your kind of money expect returns on their investments. And I know my son, and I can't be anyone's project. The accusation hit its mark. Harrison had built his fortune by being calculating, by seeing opportunities where others saw obstacles. Even his rare acts of charity came with tax benefits and social capital. But this felt different. This felt necessary in a way he couldn't explain. So you'd rather let your son suffer than accept help from someone you've decided is the enemy? It was a low blow, and Harrison regretted it immediately. Destiny's face went pale, her hand instinctively moving to her phone where Malik's prescription reminder was probably already flashing. Don't you dare, she whispered. Don't you dare use my child against me. Mrs. Johnson, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. Tears gathered in her eyes, but her voice remained steady. You meant to hurt me because I hurt you first. Because I didn't fall down grateful at your feet like you expected. Harrison felt something crumble inside him. She was right. Somewhere in the last 5 minutes, his genuine desire to help had twisted into wounded pride. When was the last time someone had questioned his motives? When was the last time someone had seen past his wealth to the man underneath and found him wanting? You're right, he said quietly. I'm sorry. Destiny blinked, clearly not expecting the apology. What? You're right. I am used to gratitude. I am used to people accepting my help without questions. He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly feeling every one of his 42 years. I haven't had to examine my motives in a long time. And now that you have? Harrison looked at her, really looked. At the way she held herself like a shield against the world, at the love that radiated from her even in her anger, at the strength it must have taken to walk into his store in the first place. Now I think maybe I need to help you as much as you need help. That's not better, Destiny said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. That's just more honest. Behind them, the store's front door chimed as another customer entered. Patricia moved to greet them, leaving Harrison and Destiny in their bubble of complicated tension. What if we called it even? Harrison asked. You let me help with Malik's medical expenses, and in return, you help me remember what it feels like to do something that matters. I'm not your redemption story. I'm not asking you to be. Harrison stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm asking you to let two people help each other. Destiny stared at the ring on her finger, Jerome's promise glinting in the store's perfect lighting. He'd wanted her never to be alone, but he'd also been proud, too proud to accept help from her family when they'd struggled to pay rent in those early years. I need to think about it, she said finally. Of course. Harrison reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. My direct number. When you're ready. Destiny took the card, her fingers brushing his for just a moment. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through both of them. Not attraction exactly, but recognition. Two people who'd been carrying their burdens alone for too long. I should go, she said. Malik will be wondering where I am. Harrison nodded, watching as she walked toward the door. Just before she reached it, she turned back. Mr. Blake? Thank you for giving me back my ring. And then she was gone, leaving Harrison standing in his perfect store, surrounded by beautiful things that suddenly felt meaningless compared to the warmth that simple thanks had kindled in his chest. 3 days later, Harrison found himself doing something he hadn't done in 15 years, sitting in a hospital waiting room. He'd tried to stay away, tried to convince himself that respecting Destiny's need to think was the right thing to do. But when Patricia mentioned that Mrs. Johnson had called asking about payment plans for a ring she no longer wanted to sell, he'd known thinking time was over. Chicago General's emergency room buzzed with controlled chaos. Harrison felt out of place in his tailored suit among the collection of worried families in scrubs and street clothes. He was about to ask at the reception desk when he spotted her. Destiny sat hunched in a plastic chair, her head in her hands. Even from across the room, he could see the exhaustion radiating from her posture. And 4 poles stood beside her chair, and Harrison followed the tubing down to where it disappeared under a thin hospital blanket covering a small form curled against her side. Malik. Harrison approached slowly, not wanting to startle them. Up close, he could see the child's face, fever-flushed cheeks, breathing that came too quick and shallow. Destiny looked up as his shadow fell across them, and her expression cycled through surprise, wariness, and something that might have been relief. Mr. Blake. Her voice was hoarse, probably from hours of advocating for her son with doctors and insurance representatives. What are you doing here? Patricia told me you'd called. He gestured to the empty chair across from her. May I? She nodded, too tired to maintain her guard. The insurance company is calling his condition pre-existing now. Says the previous hospitalization means they won't cover the preventive medications. Her laugh was bitter. Catch, 22. Can't prevent the problem that's already started. Harrison settled into the uncomfortable plastic chair, his expensive suit incongruous in the institutional setting. How long have you been here? Since yesterday morning. They're waiting for his fever to break before they'll release him, but without the medication. She trailed off, stroking Malik's hair with gentle fingers. The cycle just continues. A woman in scrubs approached them, clipboard in hand. Mrs. Johnson, I have some forms for you to review regarding payment arrangements for the extended stay. Destiny's shoulders sagged as she took the papers. Harrison watched her scan the numbers, saw the exact moment hope died in her eyes. The forms might as well have been written in a foreign language for all the good they did here. I'll need some time to review these, she said quietly. Of course. Just bring them back to the desk when you're ready. The woman walked away, leaving them in heavy silence. Harrison cleared his throat. Destiny. She looked up, surprised by his use of her first name. Don't. Please. I can't handle another argument about pride right now. No argument. Harrison pulled out his phone. Just a phone call. Before she could protest, he was dialing. Patricia? I need you to contact Dr. Mitchell at Chicago General immediately. Tell him Harrison Blake is covering all medical expenses for patient Malik Johnson, effective immediately. Yes, everything. Current stay, medications, follow-up care. Set up an account. Mr. Blake, stop. Destiny reached for his phone, but he held up a hand. And Patricia? I want you to call Dr. Sarah Chin. She's the pediatric pulmonologist at Northwestern. Tell her I'm referring to a patient who needs specialized care. Cost is not a factor. He ended the call and looked at Destiny. Done. Tears were streaming down her face now, but her expression was more angry than grateful. You can't make decisions about my son without asking me. You're right. I should have asked. Harrison leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. So I'm asking, will you let me help him? Why are you doing this? The question came out broken, exhausted. And don't tell me it's about feeling better about yourself. There has to be more. Harrison looked at Malik's sleeping form, so small and vulnerable against the harsh hospital lighting. The boy's face reminded him of his own reflection in his mother's bedroom mirror the night his father died, the same mix of innocence and premature understanding that some children carried. When I was 8, he said quietly, my father had a heart attack. We waited in a room, just like this one, while my mother tried to figure out how to pay for his care. She had to choose between his medication and keeping our apartment. He paused, the memory still sharp after 34 years. She chose the medication. We lost the apartment anyway when he died 2 weeks later. Destiny's anger softened into something more complicated. I'm sorry. I swore I'd never be powerless like that again. Never have to choose between love and survival. Harrison met her eyes. But you know what I learned? Having power doesn't mean anything if you don't use it for something that matters. A small voice interrupted them. Mama? Both adults turned to see Malik stirring, his dark eyes bright with fever but alert. He looked at Harrison with the frank curiosity of childhood. Who's that? This is Mr. Blake, baby. He owns a jewelry store. Destiny smoothed Malik's hair. How are you feeling? Tired. And hot. Malik studied Harrison with interest. Do you have diamonds and stuff? I do. Harrison found himself smiling for the first time in days. Do you like shiny things? Mama says I can't touch them because they're too expensive. Malik coughed, the sound rattling in his small chest. But I like looking. Maybe when you're feeling better, you can come visit my store. I'll show you some really special pieces. Malik's eyes widened. Really? Really? Harrison looked at Destiny over her son's head. If your mom says it's okay. Destiny stared at them, this powerful man treating her sick child like he mattered, her son responding with the trust that came so easily to children. The walls she'd built around her heart felt suddenly fragile. Mama? Malik tugged at her hand. Can we go see the diamonds? We'll see, baby. First you need to get better. The nice doctor said I can go home soon if my fever breaks. Malik settled back against her side. Will you still be here when I wake up, Mr. Blake? Harrison looked at Destiny, a question in his eyes. She hesitated for a long moment, then nodded almost imperceptibly. I'll be here, he promised. 2 hours later, Malik's fever finally broke. Harrison had stayed through the shift change, through Destiny's quiet tears of relief, through the doctor's cautious optimism about the new treatment plan. Now the boy slept peacefully, his breathing finally steady, while Destiny dozed fitfully in the chair beside his bed. Harrison found himself in the hospital cafeteria at 2 a.m., nursing his third cup of terrible coffee and staring at his phone. 17 missed calls from his assistant, 43 unread emails, 2 board meetings he'd blown off without explanation. His entire world was imploding because he couldn't bring himself to leave this sterile building. You know, most billionaires don't spend their Friday nights in hospital cafeterias. He looked up to find Destiny approaching with her own cup of coffee, looking more exhausted than anyone had a right to look and still be standing. How did you know I was here? The nurses talk. Apparently, it's not every day someone in a $3,000 suit camps out in the pediatric ward. She sat across from him, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. Malik's sleeping. Really sleeping, not that fitful fever sleep. That's good. Harrison studied her face in the harsh fluorescent light. Even exhausted, even wearing day-old clothes, she carried herself with a dignity that humbled him. You should try to rest too. Can't. Too wired. She took a sip of coffee and made a face. God, this is awful. The worst I've ever had, Harrison agreed, and they shared a tired smile. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sounds the distant hum of vending machines and the occasional page over the intercom. Finally, Destiny spoke. Tell me about your mother. The question caught him off guard. What? You said she had to choose between your father's medication and keeping your apartment. What happened to her? Harrison stared into his coffee cup, seeing memories instead of the bitter liquid. She blamed herself for his death. Convinced herself that if she'd been smarter, worked harder, made different choices. She never got past it. Did she remarry? No. She said she didn't deserve happiness after failing him. Harrison's voice grew quiet. She died when I was 25. Breast cancer. Caught it too late because she couldn't afford regular checkups. Destiny reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. The gesture was automatic, maternal, but it sent warmth up his arm that had nothing to do with the coffee. I'm sorry. She would have liked you, Harrison said, surprising himself. She would have said you have her kind of strength. What kind is that? The kind that bends but doesn't break. The kind that keeps going when giving up would be easier. He turned his hand over, palm up, so their fingers could intertwine. The kind that walks into a jewelry store to sell her wedding ring for her child's medication. Destiny's eyes filled with tears. I almost didn't. I sat outside your store for 20 minutes, trying to work up the courage. What changed your mind? Malik woke up that morning asking if the medicine would make him feel normal. Normal. She laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. Like other kids, they don't have to think about breathing. And I realized I'd been so focused on preserving Jerome's memory that I was failing at the one thing he actually asked me to do. Which was, take care of our son. Jerome made me promise, right before he died, that I wouldn't let pride get in the way of doing what was best for Malik. She wiped her eyes with her free hand. Guess it took me longer than it should have to understand what that meant. Harrison squeezed her fingers gently. You were protecting something precious. There's no shame in that. Isn't there? Destiny's voice turned bitter. You want to know the truth? The ring wasn't even worth that much to begin with. Jerome bought it from a pawn shop because it was all he could afford. The inscription is crooked because he carved it himself with a nail file in our bathroom. She was crying freely now, the exhaustion finally breaking down her defenses. But he was so proud when he gave it to me. So proud that he could offer me something real, something that meant forever. And I wore it like it was the crown jewels because to him, to us, it was. It still is, Harrison said firmly. How can you say that? You've seen real jewelry. You know what quality looks like. Harrison lifted their joined hands and studied her ring in the fluorescent light. The gold was indeed a bit dull, the inscription slightly uneven, the setting simple to the point of plain. In his store, it would be classified as costume jewelry. But he was learning that value and worth were different things entirely. You want to know what I see when I look at this ring? He asked. I see a man who worked extra shifts for months because he loved you. I see promises made and kept. I see a woman who honored those promises, even when it cost her everything. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently, ring and all. I see something I've spent my entire adult life trying to buy but never found. Something that can't be appraised or insured or put under glass for safekeeping. What's that? Real love. The kind that transforms everything it touches. Harrison met her eyes. The kind that makes a scared 8-year-old feel safe in a hospital room because his mother is there. The kind that builds something beautiful out of nothing but devotion and hope. Destiny stared at him, seeing past the expensive suit and perfect grooming to the lonely man underneath. Is that what you want? Real love? I thought I wanted success, power, security. Harrison traced the inscription on her ring with his thumb. But sitting here with you, watching you love your son, I think maybe I've been collecting the wrong things. Have you ever realized that what you thought you wanted wasn't actually what you needed? The next morning brought the kind of crisp October sunshine that made Chicago feel like the most beautiful city in the world. Malik had been discharged with a bag full of medications and strict instructions for follow-up care, all of which Harrison had quietly arranged to be delivered to their apartment and covered by the medical account he'd established. Are you sure about this? Destiny asked as they stood outside Westfield Jewelers, Malik's small hand tucked securely in hers. He's still recovering. Mama, I feel fine, Malik protested, though he was still pale and moved more slowly than usual. And Mr. Blake promised to show me the diamonds. Harrison smiled down at the boy, surprised by how naturally paternal feelings had awakened in him. Just for a little while. And if you get tired, we'll stop immediately. The store looked different in the morning light, less intimidating, more magical. Harrison had called ahead to ensure they'd have privacy, and Patricia had prepared a special display case with some of their most stunning but less fragile pieces. Whoa, Malik breathed as they entered. His eyes went wide as he took in the glittering displays. It's like a treasure cave. Want to see something really special? Harrison led them to the prepared case. This is a sapphire from Sri Lanka. It's over 200 years old. Malik pressed his nose against the glass, his fever-bright eyes reflecting the deep blue stone. How do you know how old it is? Well, we have experts who study these things. They can tell by the way it was cut, the type of setting, even tiny inclusions in the stone that are like fingerprints. Harrison found himself genuinely enjoying the explanation. When was the last time someone had asked him about his work with such genuine curiosity? Inclusions are like birthmarks for gems, he continued. They make each stone unique. Like how I have a birthmark on my shoulder that looks like a butterfly. Malik asked. Exactly like that. Harrison glanced at Destiny, who was watching their interaction with a soft expression he couldn't quite read. Every beautiful thing has something that makes it special. For the next hour, Harrison found himself seeing his inventory through 8-year-old eyes. Malik was fascinated by everything, the way light split through diamonds, the deep green fire of emeralds, the warm glow of pearls that Harrison explained came from oysters living in the ocean. Mr. Blake, Malik said as they paused in front of a display of antique brooches. Do you have kids? The question hit Harrison unexpectedly hard. No, I don't. Why not? Malik, Destiny said gently. That's a personal question. It's okay, Harrison said, crouching down to Malik's eye level. I guess I never found the right person to have kids with. My daddy died, Malik said matter-of-factly. But Mama says he's still watching over us. Maybe he helped us find you. The innocent observation sent a jolt through Harrison's chest. Maybe he did. Malik, baby, why don't you look at the pearls while Mr. Blake and I talk? Destiny suggested, sensing the emotional weight of the moment. As Malik wandered a few feet away, still within sight but out of earshot, Destiny turned to Harrison. You're good with him. He's easy to be good with. He's remarkable. He is. Pride glowed in her voice. Smart as a whip, curious about everything, kind to everyone he meets. Jerome would be so proud. Harrison watched Malik examining a strand of Tahitian pearls with the intensity of a graduate gemologist. You've raised an incredible boy. We both did until... She trailed off, then straightened her shoulders. Harrison, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Anything. Is this real? This kindness, this interest in us, is it real, or are we some kind of charity project that you'll lose interest in once the novelty wears off? The question was fair, and Harrison respected her for asking it directly. 3 days ago, I would have said it was charity, a way to feel better about myself, like you accused me of. And now, Harrison looked at Malik, then back at Destiny. Now I think it's the most real thing that's happened to me in years. Maybe ever. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Not of you exactly, but of this. Of letting Malik get attached to someone who might disappear. I'm scared too, Harrison said, surprising them both with his honesty. I'm scared that I don't know how to be the kind of man you and Malik deserve. I'm scared that I'll mess this up because I've never had anything this important to lose. So what do we do? Before Harrison could answer, Malik called out excitedly. Mama, look. This one looks just like the ring Daddy gave you. They turned to see him pointing at a simple gold band in the antique case. Nothing fancy, but warm and classic in its simplicity. It does, Destiny said softly, moving to stand beside her son. Very similar. Harrison joined them, studying the ring Malik had noticed. It was indeed similar to Destiny's, perhaps a few decades older, but the same warm gold, the same understated elegance. The man who owned this loved his wife very much, Harrison said. He saved for months to buy it, just like your daddy did. How do you know? Malik asked. Because love leaves marks on things. If you know how to look, you can see them. Harrison glanced at Destiny. Some of the most beautiful pieces in this store aren't the expensive ones. They're the ones that have been treasured. Malik nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense. Mama treasures her ring. She talks to it sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping. Destiny's cheeks flushed. Malik, I think that's beautiful, Harrison said gently. Talking to the people we love, even when they can't answer back. It keeps them close. Do you talk to your parents? Malik asked. I should, Harrison admitted. I think I forgot how. Malik considered this with the seriousness of a child who'd faced mortality too young. I could teach you. It's easy once you remember they're listening. Standing in his store surrounded by millions of dollars worth of precious stones and metals, Harrison realized that the most valuable thing in the room was this 8-year-old boy's wisdom and the love that had shaped it. I'd like that very much, he said. The call came at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, just as Harrison was closing the store after another afternoon spent with Destiny and Malik. They'd been meeting regularly for 2 weeks now, sometimes at the store, sometimes at the park, once at a science museum where Malik had peppered the docents with questions that delighted Harrison with their complexity. It was Patricia's voice on the phone, strained with barely controlled panic. Mr. Blake, we have a problem. A big one. Harrison's blood chilled. What's wrong? It's about the Johnson account. The medical expenses you've been covering for the boy. Someone's been asking questions. A lot of questions. What kind of questions? A private investigator came by this morning. Said he was working for your board of directors. Asking about unusual expenditures, personal relationships, potential improprieties. The word hit Harrison like a physical blow. Improprieties? I'm sorry, Mr. Blake. I tried to be discreet, but he knew specifics. The hospital payments, the specialist referrals, the amount of time you've been spending with Mrs. Johnson and her son. Harrison sank into his desk chair, the implications cascading through his mind. The board had been restless lately about his increasingly hands-off approach to business, his missed meetings, his distraction from the quarterly projections. But this, did you tell him anything? Nothing beyond what he already seemed to know. But Mr. Blake. Patricia's voice dropped. He asked about Mrs. Johnson specifically, about whether your relationship with her was personal. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Harrison felt something cold and familiar settle in his stomach, the same feeling he'd had as a child when he realized his father wasn't getting better, that all the hope in the world couldn't change some realities. Thank you for the warning, Patricia. What do you want me to do? Nothing. I'll handle this. But as Harrison hung up the phone, he wondered what exactly there was to handle. His board wasn't wrong to be concerned. He had been neglecting business. He had been spending company resources on personal matters. And his feelings for Destiny had grown far beyond simple charity, though he'd been careful not to examine those feelings too closely. An hour later, he stood outside Destiny's apartment building in Englewood, his Bentley drawing curious stares from neighbors. The building was clean but tired, the kind of place where good people made the best of limited circumstances. He'd never been inside, though Malik had invited him several times. Destiny always suggested they meet elsewhere, and Harrison had respected her boundaries. Now he wished he'd insisted. Wished he'd been part of their real world, instead of keeping them safely contained in his. He climbed 3 flights of stairs to apartment 3B and knocked softly. Destiny answered almost immediately, as if she'd been waiting by the door. Her smile faded when she saw his expression. Harrison? What's wrong? We need to talk. She stepped aside to let him in, and Harrison got his first glimpse of their home. It was small, tiny really, but warm with personal touches. Malik's artwork covered the refrigerator, and books were stacked on every available surface. A fold-out couch served as both living room seating and, he suspected, Destiny's bed. It was beautiful in its simplicity, and it made Harrison feel like an intruder. Malik's doing homework in his room, Destiny said, closing the door. What happened? Harrison ran a hand through his hair, suddenly unsure how to begin. My board of directors has hired a private investigator to look into my recent activities. Activities? Destiny's voice went carefully neutral. The money I've been spending on Malik's medical care. The time I've been spending with you both. They think. He couldn't bring himself to say it. They think what, Harrison? They think I'm having an affair with you. The words fell between them like broken glass. Destiny's face went through several expressions, shock, hurt, and finally, a cold anger that made Harrison's chest tighten. Of course they do, she said quietly. Because why else would a rich white man help a poor black woman? It couldn't possibly be genuine concern for a sick child. Destiny, that's not. No, they're right to be suspicious. Her voice was getting louder, and Harrison glanced nervously toward Malik's room. What was I thinking? That someone like you would just care? Without wanting something in return. I do care. This has nothing to do with what they think. Doesn't it? Destiny's eyes blazed. Tell me honestly, Harrison. In all the time we've been spending together, have you thought about it? About me? About us? The question hung between them, demanding honesty that Harrison wasn't prepared to give. Because the truth was, he had thought about it. About the way she laughed at Malik's jokes, about how her hand felt during those long hospital hours, about what it might be like to be part of their small, fierce family. His silence was answer enough. Get out, Destiny said, her voice breaking. Destiny, please. Get out. The words erupted from her with years of accumulated pain and disappointment. I should have known better. I should have listened to my instincts. What about Malik's medication? The treatment plan? We'll manage. We always have. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was steady. I won't let my son become part of whatever sick game this is. It's not a game. Then what is it, Harrison? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you collected us. Like we were another pretty thing for you to own and show off to make yourself feel better. The accusation hit too close to home. Wasn't that exactly what he'd done his whole life? Collected beautiful things to fill the emptiness inside him? That's not fair, he said weakly. Fair? Destiny laughed bitterly. Nothing about this is fair. It's not fair that my 8-year-old son has to worry about breathing. It's not fair that I have to choose between rent and medication. And it's not fair that you made me believe, even for a minute, that someone might help us without expecting something in return. From the bedroom came Malik's voice. Mama? Is everything okay? Destiny wiped her eyes quickly. Everything's fine, baby. Mr. Blake was just leaving. Harrison looked toward the bedroom door, wanting desperately to say goodbye to the boy who'd taught him about wonder and hope. But Destiny stepped between them, her message clear. Please go, she whispered. Before he sees you leave. Harrison walked to the door, each step feeling like a betrayal of something precious. At the threshold, he turned back. Destiny, don't, she said, not looking at him. Just don't. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like breaking hearts. Harrison sat in his empty penthouse apartment, staring at the Chicago skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. 3 days had passed since Destiny threw him out of her life, and the silence was deafening. His phone buzzed constantly with business calls he ignored, board meetings he skipped, deals that demanded his attention but felt meaningless. On his coffee table lay a folder his assistant had delivered that morning, a detailed report from the private investigator, complete with photographs. Pictures of him with Destiny and Malik at the hospital, at his store, walking through Millennium Park. In the photos, they looked like a family. The board was meeting tomorrow to discuss his erratic behavior and questionable associations. His assistant had warned him that there was talk of forcing him out if he didn't refocus on business and cut ties with what they called distractions. Harrison picked up one of the photos, Malik pointing excitedly at something in the jewelry case, while Harrison and Destiny watched with matching expressions of fondness. When had he started looking at them like that? When did protecting their happiness become more important than protecting his reputation? His intercom buzzed. Mr. Blake? There's a Malik Johnson here to see you. He says it's important. Harrison's heart stopped. Send him up immediately. The elevator seemed to take forever. When the doors opened, Malik stepped out alone, looking small and determined in his oversized jacket. His breathing was labored, not dangerously so, but enough to remind Harrison that this brave little boy was still fighting a battle every day. Malik, where's your mother? Harrison knelt to the boy's eye level, scanning behind him for Destiny. She doesn't know I'm here. She thinks I'm at my friend Tyler's house. Malik's chin was set with stubborn resolve. But I needed to talk to you. How did you get here? Bus. I saved my lunch money for 2 weeks. Malik looked around the penthouse with wide eyes. Wow, you live really high up. Harrison felt a stab of panic mixed with admiration. This 8-year-old had navigated public transportation across the city to get here. Malik, your mom is going to be worried sick. I know, but she won't listen when I try to talk about you. She just gets sad and changes the subject. Malik moved to the window, pressing his small hands against the glass. She cries at night. She thinks I can't hear her, but I can. The words hit Harrison like a physical blow. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt her. Then why did you? The directness of the question floored him. How did you explain adult complications to a child who saw the world in terms of kindness and cruelty, help and abandonment? It's complicated, Malik. That's what grown-ups always say when they don't want to tell the truth. Malik turned from the window, his dark eyes serious beyond his years. My mama taught me that there's always a choice between doing what's easy and doing what's right. Which one did you choose? Harrison sank onto his leather couch, feeling every one of his 42 years. I think I chose what was easy. Why? Because I was scared. The admission surprised him with its honesty. Scared that people would think bad things about your mom and me. Scared that I'd lose my business. Scared that I wasn't good enough for you and your mother. Malik considered this with the gravity of a much older person. My daddy was scared too sometimes. Mama told me he was scared when I was born because he didn't know how to be a good father. What did he do? He tried anyway. Mama says being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared. Malik climbed onto the couch beside Harrison. Are you brave, Mr. Blake? The question hung in the air between them. Harrison thought about his father, who'd worked himself to death trying to provide for his family. About his mother, who'd chosen love over security and paid the price. About Destiny, who'd walked into his store ready to sacrifice her most precious possession for her child's health. I don't know, he said honestly, but I'd like to be. Good. Malik smiled for the first time since arriving. Because I have a plan. For the next hour, Harrison listened as an 8-year-old boy outlined a strategy that was both impossibly simple and remarkably sophisticated. Malik had been paying attention to everything. The board meeting Harrison had mentioned, the investigators' questions, the way his mother's face changed whenever Harrison's name came up. You have to choose, Malik said finally. Your fancy job or us. Because Mama won't let you have both. She's been hurt too much by people who pretend to care. And if I choose you and your mother, then you have to prove it. Not with money. Mama doesn't trust money anymore. You have to prove it with your actions. Malik's expression grew solemn. But Mr. Blake, if you choose us and then change your mind later, it will break Mama's heart. And mine too. The weight of that responsibility settled on Harrison's shoulders like a mantle. This wasn't just about following his heart. It was about being worthy of the trust this remarkable child was offering him. What about your medicine? The treatments? Mama found a clinic that works with people who don't have much money. It's not as fancy as the doctors you found, but they're good people. Mama says we'll figure it out like we always do. Malik's voice carried his mother's strength. We don't need your money, Mr. Blake. But I think we need you. Harrison pulled out his phone and scrolled to his assistant's number. Then he stopped, looking at Malik. Are you sure about this? Really sure? Because once I make this call, there's no going back. Malik nodded with absolute certainty. My daddy told Mama to take care of me, but he also told her not to be afraid to let people love us. I think he sent you to help with both. Harrison smiled, the first real smile he'd felt in days. Then let's go get your mother. Together. As he dialed his assistant's number to cancel tomorrow's board meeting and schedule a very different kind of conversation, Harrison realized that for the first time in his adult life, he was about to choose love over fear. It felt terrifying. It felt perfect. Destiny was pacing her small living room like a caged animal when the knock came. She'd called Tyler's mother an hour ago, only to discover that Malik had never arrived for his playdate. Panic had been building in her chest with each unanswered call to his phone. She yanked open the door, ready to unleash her terror on whoever was interrupting her search, and found herself face to face with Harrison. Malik stood beside him, holding his hand and looking sheepish but determined. Malik Jerome Johnson. Relief and fury warred in her voice. Do you have any idea how worried I've been? I'm sorry, Mama, but this was important. Destiny's eyes moved from her son to Harrison, taking in his rumpled appearance, the way he seemed different somehow, less polished, more human. What's going on? May we come in? Harrison asked quietly. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said 3 days ago. Destiny wanted to say no, wanted to protect the fragile peace she'd been building since she'd thrown him out. But Malik's hand in Harrison's, the hope shining in her son's eyes, made her step aside. They settled in her tiny living room, the space feeling even smaller with Harrison's presence filling it. He looked around as if seeing it for the first time, really seeing it, and his expression grew soft. This is beautiful, he said, and meant it. Your home. It's filled with love. What do you want, Harrison? Destiny's voice was carefully controlled, but he could hear the hurt underneath. Harrison took a deep breath, looking at Malik, who nodded encouragingly. This morning, I resigned from my position as CEO of Blake Enterprises. Destiny blinked, certain she'd misheard. You what? I walked away. From the board, from the pressure, from a life that was slowly suffocating me. Harrison's voice grew stronger with each word. I won't let anyone make you feel ashamed for accepting help. I won't let them turn what we have into something dirty or transactional. Harrison, you can't just... I can. I did. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. I've been working with lawyers all afternoon. I'm keeping 2 stores, the Chicago location and one in Milwaukee. The rest I'm selling. The proceeds will go into a foundation for families dealing with pediatric medical expenses. Destiny stared at him, struggling to process what he was saying. You're giving up your entire empire? Empire built on what? Buying and selling beautiful things while ignoring the beautiful people right in front of me. Harrison shook his head. I've been collecting the wrong treasures my whole life. Malik couldn't contain his excitement any longer. Tell her the rest, Mr. Blake. Harrison smiled at the boy's enthusiasm, then turned back to Destiny. I want to run the Chicago store differently. Less focus on luxury sales, more on creating a space where people can celebrate love in all its forms. Custom work for couples who can't afford traditional jewelers. Repair services for pieces that matter more than their worth. And I told him we could help. Malik burst in. Mama, you're so good at making old things beautiful again. And I could learn about gems and stuff. Destiny felt tears building behind her eyes. You can't change your entire life for us. I'm not changing it for you, Harrison said softly. I'm changing it because of you. Because you and Malik showed me what really matters. Because I'd rather have a small life filled with love than a big life filled with nothing. He stood and moved to kneel in front of her chair, taking her hands in his. Destiny, I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust by not being brave enough to stand up for what we had. But if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that some things are worth more than money or reputation or the approval of people who don't matter. The board will destroy you, she whispered. Let them try. I have something they don't understand, something they can't buy or leverage or take away. Harrison brought her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles just as he had that first night in the hospital. I have you, if you'll have me. Destiny looked at her son, who was practically vibrating with excitement, then back at Harrison. What exactly are you asking me? Harrison reached into his other pocket and pulled out something that made Destiny's breath catch. It was the simple gold band from his store, the one Malik had noticed weeks ago, the one that looked so much like her own wedding ring. I'm asking if you believe in second chances. I'm asking if you think Jerome would approve of a man who loves you and Malik enough to build a whole new life around you. Harrison's voice broke slightly. I'm asking if you'll marry me, Destiny Johnson. Not because you need saving, but because I do. The ring caught the lamplight, simple and warm and perfect. Destiny stared at it, then at Harrison's face, seeing nothing but love and hope and the promise of tomorrow. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes. Harrison slipped the ring onto her right hand, next to Jerome's band on her left. Past and future, loss and hope, all together on hands that had learned to hold both grief and joy. Malik cheered and launched himself at both of them, creating a tangle of arms and laughter and tears. As they held each other in the small apartment that had sheltered so much love, Harrison felt something he'd never experienced before, the absolute certainty that he was exactly where he belonged. 6 months later, at a small ceremony in the jewelry store surrounded by friends and family, Destiny walked down an aisle lined with displays of custom pieces made for couples who measured love in devotion rather than dollars. Malik served as ring bearer, carrying the simple gold bands that would join the ones they already wore. As Harrison took her hands, Destiny felt Jerome's presence like a blessing. He'd kept his promise, she'd never been alone. He'd just sent help in a form she'd never expected. Forever and always, Harrison whispered as they exchanged vows. Forever and always, she whispered back, and meant it with her whole heart. What does true wealth mean to you, and how might recognizing it change the way you show love to others?